So hi, good afternoon. It's Gavin White, CEO of Autotech Recruit again here. Just talking to this afternoon with Anthony McAteer, Trading Director of Euro Car Parts Group. All right, Anthony, how you doing, mate?
Good, thanks, Gav. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good, thank you. So, so usual format like we've done recently with Andy and Quentin. I'm going to take a bit of a focus on the parts side of the industry today, and Anthony's going to. I'm going to throw a few questions at Anthony, and hopefully Anthony's going to shed some light on the parts industry at the moment. So here we go, mate. If you're ready. So you've remained obviously operational to support key workers, and how's the business and your colleagues found the period, and what key changes have you guys made as a business?
Yeah, it's been challenging, I guess, from both a business and a people perspective. So from a business point of view, as you said, we've remained open and operating, offering coverage across the UK to keep the key workers moving, essentially, and whether that's through us supplying parts to the garages, the emergency services direct, or the roadside assistant businesses that are out there. The branch network has been working tirelessly to support them and keep the part supply going. Obviously, demand levels have dropped significantly. So there's large parts of our business that are operating under capacity at the moment. As a result of that, we've placed a number of our colleagues on furlough. And we've topped up the furlough pay by 10%, which I think the government putting that in place has made this, I guess, more comfortable for all of us to be making the decisions we're making, because the alternative that would have been there had furlough not been in place for everybody doesn't bear thinking about. And what we've, from a network point of view, we've just finished consolidating the size of the network. So in a number of areas, we've temporarily closed some of our branches. So in some towns where we've got 2 or 3 locations, we've consolidated down to 1, moving a large percentage of the branch teams over to the branch that remains open, either in the same town or a few miles apart. But it's meant that we've still got over 200 branches open in the UK.
No, good, makes sense. Yeah. So you're also supplying many garages and workshops that remained open, as we've obviously pointed towards already, to providing the services for key workers. What sort of challenges have you faced getting parts to these businesses?
Yeah, I think in many ways we've been fairly fortunate. We've got our T2 National Distribution Centre that we'd been running excess stock with due to Brexit. We're sort of braced for Brexit that went the way it did. So in many aspects we've got the supply chain aspect in a good place, and we hold good stock levels there to support our branch network, either directly in the branch or through our hubs that are spread across the regions. Obviously, without the supply of parts, garages wouldn't be able to keep the key workers going. So we know we've had a big part to play in that one, and our branch availability has been in line with pre-crisis levels. So from that point of view, the availability of parts we've not really struggled too much with.
No. Okay. I think on the interview I did with Quentin the other day, I think he was showing that the workshop capacity or workshop throughput across Europe had been down something like 82% across Germany, France, and that. So, yeah, it's quite interesting stats that are going on out there at the moment. But
and I think that's helped with the availability piece. We're not running at 100%. When the challenge, I guess, is that the demand has dropped by circa 50%. So due to that, availability isn't the issue. It's actually what we are seeing is spikes in product areas that you wouldn't normally see spikes in. So batteries, for instance, is an absolute peak, all-time record sales in batteries at the moment, from where cars are sitting around on driveways not being used. We're running effectively. Yeah, I mean, we're effectively running winter stock levels in April, and seeing winter demand in April during the COVID period. So it's quite surprising, some of the things that are coming out.
Yeah, we were talking about this with Quentin about, actually, is the garage moving forward going to see a different sort of work coming through it? Certainly, I would expect probably more in the franchise dealer network, but then there's obviously opportunity for IMTs as well there, that cars sat around as long as they have been. I know certainly here, local neighbours on my estate here, going out starting their car for the first time after 4 or 5 weeks from working from home, and it click. It's because it drained the battery.
And obviously you're running straight out with your jump leads to help them.
Absolutely, of course I am. Yeah. So the electronic handbrakes, all these sorts of things are seizing on, where the calipers are seizing on. So you're going to see, obviously serviceable items that the industry's perhaps lost. You're now going to see different work levels in a different peak periods of the year that you wouldn't normally see. You'd associate batteries with winter, wouldn't you? But now we're sort of, given the climate and the weather we've had at the moment, it's you wouldn't be expected to be selling the amount of batteries you would in 20 odd degrees heat, would you? So with the garages and the workshops facing, are you seeing them facing any labour challenges while coping with any sort of key worker demand at the moment, or?
Yeah, I think the feedback, I guess, has gone in line with what we've seen as a nation. So, like most businesses, the workshop faced the same challenges with sickness and self-isolation at the early stages. And I think now we're returning back to a more normal level, and actually the workshops are probably in more of a control as to what their workforce percentage looks like, and I guess they're doing the same as what we're doing, which is flexing up and down dependent on demand. But certainly at the early stages of this, with the self-isolation in particular, which was actually the hardest bit. If a member of your family or friends that you've been socialising with had the symptoms and you were then forced to self-isolate, I think that was a really, really tough time for the workshops to go through. But the positive is that's been, and now I feel like there's a shift of power back to the workshops for them to take control of what their workforce looks like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah.
How about yourself? Have you guys seen much in regards to labour requirement from you guys?
Yeah, we've seen a massive decrease. I think fourth week in March was probably one of our best weeks ever, and in the fifth week in March it was probably one of our worst weeks ever. So it was it'd gone from having nearly 300 guys out a week to down to I think about 8. So it's it's a telltale sign, isn't it? And I think when the MOT decision was made from the 30th of March onwards, that pretty much killed anything off for us personally, as it did most other people in the industry as well, I think. So
it definitely drove a lot of that emptied a lot of workshops bookings. I think we all felt the pain on that one, rightly or wrongly. But yeah, the up until that announcement, I think everyone was still fairly upbeat. Buoyant would be the wrong word, but certainly more positive. And then that was announced, and then I think the workshops and ourselves, we started to see demand drop pretty radically as a result of the end consumer seeing it and going, well, I don't need to get my car MOT'd anymore. Interpreted wrong, because obviously they should have still got it MOT'd. But
doesn't stop them still doing it if they want to do it. But what the general public generally, when it comes to car maintenance, collectively, I know that there are a minority of people out there that will religiously get their vehicle serviced and MOT'd on the dot every year, but the vast majority, if someone turns around and says it's okay, you don't need to spend any money on your vehicle for the next 6 months, people are going to go, oh, thanks very much, and not worry about it, So my wife probably being one of them, to be honest with you. So, but but we saw definitely. Some of the customers, I did allude this to this particular customer the other day with Andy Sava. There's a few customers that I have spoken to, and this one was right out in the back of mid Wales somewhere, and the phone was ringing off the hook. I was speaking to the lady on the phone about something else, about some training, and she, I was like, every 2 seconds, I was like, do you have to get that call? Do you have to get that call? And she was just, oh, we've been so busy. We've been hectically busy. And she said, we did probably make a bit of an early knee-jerk reaction to probably furlough too many of our staff before we actually knew what was going to come out of this. And she said, obviously, we're regretting that now, because once they're locked down for 3 weeks, they're locked down for 3 weeks. So. Some people, I think it all depends on the demographic and how much competition you've got around you. And, I suppose if you're a garage and you haven't got many other garages around you in the middle of Wales somewhere, then, naturally you might be doing okay, mightn't you? So.
I think Andy Sava picked it up the other day as well. It's a completely different time for all of us, including the independent workshops. And I think, it's time for that. They've got time now to do some outbound calls to their regular customers to, ask them, your MOT is coming up, your service your service is coming up. And I think the uptake in that's actually surprising a lot of workshops. When they're making the outbound call, the take up they're getting, I think, is actually quite surprising. Yeah. And there's probably a number of reasons for that. A lot of people are looking for any excuse to get out of their house. If they've been contacted by their local garage and been given the opportunity to get out of the house for an hour or a couple of hours and take the car in and have a walk home, that could be enough to get the work done.
Yeah. Alternatively, someone come and collects the vehicle for them and drops it back off. Doesn't on it. There's no need for them to leave the house, is there? But at least that. God forbid if they didn't need to use their car, at least they know their car is maintained and it's safe and it's ready to roll when they do need to use it. So
yeah.
I think it's just a different way of how people need to. It's just how to think about educating your customers in a different way, isn't it? I think if you just sit and on your hands and wait for the customers to ring you, then I'm not convinced that's necessarily going to happen. Certainly with the weather as good as it is at the moment, customers are thinking about doing other things. So. Yeah.
And likewise, when we come out the other side of this, we're all going to go back to living extremely busy lives. Running at 100 miles an hour, and getting your car serviced is then going to be seen as an inconvenience again to a number of people. So, I think if that call comes through at the right time, which is now for a number of people, then absolutely great initiative from the workshops.
Yeah, and I think, and the other thing is as well is most customers may assume that garages are closed at the moment. So yeah. Actually, that's probably why some of the garages have been getting a pleasant response and surprise back, because the customer's like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to be open." So, "Oh yeah, you are open. Okay, we might as well get it done." So, but unless you put yourself out there and tell them that you're open, they ain't going to know that, are they? So,
Yeah.
So. Okay, moving on to a couple of other questions. So the industry's sort of, as we know, is heavily reliant on car parts from China, while the country's beginning to sort of operate again. What's been the knock-on effect to the UK automotive aftermarket? Or do you see that one being in the future? China seems to sort of be able to get things up and down pretty quickly, willy-nilly, probably because they've got the manpower to do so, but that may have an effect at some point,
Yeah, we saw some delays at the early part. So, a few weeks back we were experiencing some and having some, it was struggling to get hold of people and whatnot. Certainly during January, trying to get hold of anybody in the factories and whatnot in China. But to be honest, we've either successfully prioritised the faster moving lines away from China and into alternate European sources. Or actually China's come back to normal relatively quickly. Like you said, they have that amazing ability to close a country and open a country, very, very quickly. So at the moment, touch wood, we're not experiencing any significant issues with that.
Okay, good. can you see any changes in the future? Certainly, I mean, you alluded to it earlier with Brexit, and you guys were obviously potentially stocking up on some fast-moving lines, fearing there was going to be some problems with Brexit. This may now dwarf Brexit. But, you know,
we thought there might be. We thought there might be a lot of queues at the ports, but not for this reason. So I think what's different here is that the whole world's going through this at the same time as us. Brexit obviously was slightly different because it was us against the world to a certain degree. So I think outside of the UK, the impact of this, COVID-19 has hit different countries at different times, and we're sort of feeling the impact or the waves of the impact in those countries from where we deal with in certain regions. But it seems to be rather short term. So as I said earlier, we're working circa 4 to 6 months ahead at the moment, and we're taking appropriate actions to sort of see what potentially is coming. And I guess as we sit here today, we're hearing a lot of positive of reopening of countries coming out of lockdown, across Europe and further afield. So I think we're looking forward to 6 months down the line, and with what we're seeing happening now, I think that again we're relatively comfortable that we've got enough supply in enough areas of the world to keep the parts coming in. And to be fair, we're reviewing it every day, every week. Weeks feel like days at the moment, to be fair, but that's something we are absolutely measuring.
Be interesting to see perhaps if there's any long-term sanctions and stuff like that in the future. That may be a possibility in the future. I think
as well as that, you've got the FX is going to have a big impact on all these things. The cost of freight, it's going to it's going to spread, isn't it? I think.
It takes a lot of right to come out in the wash, though, doesn't it? People don't just go, right, we're not going to trade with China anymore because of this, that, and COVID-19. Yeah. You can't just switch a supply chain. You can't switch off just like that. It takes years for that to be completely re-looked at and figured out, doesn't it? So
yeah, exactly. And I think with once this is settled down, that's when everyone will be having different conversations, because I think the way that we all operate in the automotive industry is going to change, one way or another, because at the moment, how can you, if you wanted to buy a car when you come out of this, you're not going to be able to turn up at a showroom and, go on a test drive with somebody who's sitting in the car next to you. So how does that work? So I think we're all going to go through a significant period of change. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds over the next 12, 24, 36 months. But I think, as long as we're all in it together and we're all looking to adapt, and you model your business in a way that you can change with the direction that you need to, then we'll all come out of it stronger together. But if you're set in your ways and you go, no, this is how I operate, no, this is what, then you're going to come up probably against hard times.
Yeah, no, I agree, absolutely agree. So, once we emerge from lockdown, and I've been asking this question to the other guests as they've been coming on, and I know nobody's got a crystal ball for this, but it's been an interesting subject because people have different opinions on this. Once we emerge from lockdown, the chance of garages and workshops, do you think there'll be a surge in customers needing vehicle repair? And as I posed it to Andy the other day, are we just deferring some of the work that may be there? And it's been interesting because lots of people got a different view on this.
Yeah, and to be fair, this is a debate we have daily internally as well. And you're right, I think everyone's got their own view on it. I think it's an element of both, right? So there's definitely a deferment. If your car needed an MOT and you've deferred it, it's going to need an MOT. And then I think it's going to see potentially the diaries of MOTs are going to be pretty full. So therefore, you're putting off the MOT through no fault of you not wanting to get it done, but just through actually capacity of the workshops in the UK being able to do it. The longer the car's running without that, it's going to potentially need more work when it goes in for an MOT. So we could see that the average invoice value goes up for workshops as a result of the work that's then being carried out. So it could go one of many ways. But we could see more vehicles with higher average invoice values, or we could see lower vehicles but with higher average invoice values. But either way, I think there's going to be work flowing through at a steady rate at worst, I would say, because the industry has actually remained open, right? So the government, declared garages as an essential service. Those that have closed for their own reasons, and not because they've been told they have to close. So it's also going to be interesting to see how the garages that have closed react versus those that have remained open and sort of muddled through, because that's going to have two different scenarios as well, which is why when we were talking earlier around the outbound calling and the customer connectivity that the workshops currently have capacity to make and call these customers, that's going to see a shift change as well. So yeah, I think with Andy and Quentin and myself as I guess the parts element of it, we're probably all saying very similar things, but it could go a multitude of ways. But I think the one consistent message is that there will be a flow. We're not going to see the country open back up and people not get their cars serviced or not get their cars MOT'd or not get their cars fixed. That's very, very unlikely. I think people have been sitting at home looking out at their car on their drive or wherever it may be for a period of time.
Probably thinking, when am I going to be able to get back into it? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. When they get back into it, if the aircon isn't quite cold, they're going to be looking to get that done. It's going to be a different experience for them. I never thought I'd miss the M42, and I do. It's crazy, right? So I think that it's good. The cars are going to feel different to people when they get in them, and that's going to generate work, which I take as a positive, and I'm going to, because I'm the parts side of it. But without the workshops being busy, we're out of business. So the one thing that we as a business are very sort of positive around and certainly upbeat is that it's almost like it's a pause button, and we're doing well. There's what about 35% of the volume coming through that you'd normally expect, 35% of the volume you'd normally expect. So the garages that are trading are doing an amazing job, and the ones that have closed, they'll be coming back and adding more fuel on the fire to get the work serviced.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's again, it's nobody really knows, do they? Nobody has a crystal ball, but you got to look at the fact is that the amount of cars that have been sold over the last 4 or 5 years, the car park's grown. There's more people out there. Whether people buy new cars or they don't, or the age of vehicles goes up, then actually for the aftermarket it could be a positive thing. Because if people do decide, well, actually, I'm not going to renew my PCP or contract hire or whatever this time, I'm going to keep hold of a car, or I'm going to go and buy a used car from a car warehouse type situation, then the natural age of the car park is going to grow, thus meaning probably more breakdowns, more component failures, which means more work for the workshops, doesn't it? So
yeah, and that's a great point, because PCP was definitely being viewed as a significant threat or the enemy to certainly independent workshops, because those in a PCP in the main would take it back to a main dealer. But like you say, if you're now in a position, get to the end of your PCP and you might not be in the same financial situation you were 6 months ago, it's going to lead to potentially a different purchasing decision. So I think it's like I said before, it's about flex, right? So whatever the flow is, everyone just needs to be able to adjust with it. And I hope, as I'm sure everyone does, that we're flooded with work, and therefore we're flexing up, and employment is buoyant. And obviously you'd be someone who would absolutely be supporting that. But if it doesn't, and it comes through slowly, or we stay static, everyone who's doing what they're doing now will continue to get by until that does happen, because it will happen. It's just when.
Yeah. So do you think there's been enough government financial support available for the automotive industry and aftermarket? I mean, I know the government's obviously there's a package out there for everyone based on it, but you know, do you think there could have been more support directly for our industry? I know that would have been quite hard to do, but you know, do you think there's out there that at the moment there'll be enough that enough businesses survive? Or
yeah, I mean, like you say, it's difficult to sort of, I guess, from a government point of view, single out the automotive industry, but from what we've experienced, and I mentioned it at the very beginning of this with the furlough scheme, that in itself is something that I think has been great for us, and it's been great for the individuals, because you know it's job protection, which we all look for, and for workshops. You know, the job retention scheme, the business interruption loans, the deferred payments on VAT. I think all that's been well received, and I think there's a significant number of businesses, but there's just as many not covered by financial measures. So, you know, is it great for everybody? No. It's probably better than I personally was expecting to come out of it from them. But then there is an awful lot of garages and supply chain that are stranded in that middle piece, which is, you know, they do need urgent support in accessing finance, and cash flow is an issue, and they're going to find it increasingly difficult to manage. And that's who I feel for, you know, at the moment on that.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think it's one of the things we picked up with Andy Sava the other day was, you know, for certainly in the IM sector, for a lot of garage owners, things like business cash flow forecasting, budgeting, you know, profit and loss, that accountancy side of things don't necessarily come naturally to some people like that who run a garage environment. So, you know, I think what Andy was saying out there at the moment, I think was very, very true and very just, was, you know, speak to your accountant or speak to organisations like yourself, because you can help them with that sort of stuff, you know, and get them to understand, well, you know, what is available to you, how do you structure it moving forward, what's your short-term crisis plan, but actually what's the long-term strategy as well, you know, to get out of this situation, or at least survive, you know. So
yeah, and I think that's one thing.
Yeah,
it's the understanding, isn't it? I think is with all the schemes the support schemes the government have got out, you know, if you don't understand one link in the chain, then you don't get the full benefit of what's there. So you know, Andy Sava mentioned it the other day, but you know, we need to, you know, now we all need to talk to each other. If you don't understand something, now is a great time to pick up the phone to your parts supplier and ask a question, because everyone is supporting everyone. You know, we're all supporting each other through this, and some of us are in a position where we might have more time than others to sit down, go through it, understand it again, and then be able to explain it. If you're busy keeping a workshop going, keeping staff employed, keeping customers' cars serviced, etc., that could be something that you just don't have the time to do. So, you know, don't suffer in silence. Pick up the phone, speak to your parts supplier, speak to your accountant, and ask the question, because ultimately there is an answer. It just depends on each individual's circumstance.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of positive stories on social media platforms, you know. How do you think the crisis will alter the sector moving forward?
That's a loaded question. Well, I guess in the short term, as I mentioned, we're seeing circa 30-35% of vehicle usage. Up to 40% of vehicle usage, and that's doubled in the last 7 days. So people are starting to use their cars more, which is great, because you'd like to think that would, you know, demonstrate an increase in demand in independent workshops and fast fits. You know, we expect a phased recovery depending on the severity of the lockdown measures. Now, if we stay as we are now, I think, you know, over to June and September, the spikes will continue, certainly around the repair and recovery requirements. But it looks unlikely now that we'll go into a further, you know, a more increased lockdown. So if we stay as we are, I think that's a good result. And then once the lockdown restrictions are removed, as I said earlier, we don't know, but I'd expect a flow, and I keep saying that because I don't know whether it will be a surge or whether it will be a drip, but it will be a flow. of essential parts, whether that's batteries, like I mentioned earlier, or diagnostic requirements, or the MOT service, whatever it may be. But that's definitely how we see it going. I mean, there's obviously been a significant drop in new car sales this year. That, as you rightly touched on, means that cars will be getting older, and that will be creating more opportunity for the aftermarket. And as I touched on, what I do genuinely believe is key is that the whole industry, we just need to be able to adapt and effectively change to whatever the new norm is, because it won't be what it was before we went into this.
No, agreed. Yeah, I think the crisis, how will it alter the sector? I suppose it's a loaded question because no one has that looking glass in it. But I think, I think you're right, and again, a few others have touched on this that I've spoken to. Is I think people will look at whether you're a dealership, manufacturers, parts suppliers, tire industry, whoever it is, IMTs. You're going to be. Everyone's going to look at everything differently now. How do we buy this? How do we train our staff? How do we even recruitment strategies? Everything will be completely different. Can we work? Can we work from home more in the future, which means we don't have to have bigger offices, which are big overhead costs? Again, this is
less mileage, paying out less fuel.
Exactly. This isn't just going to change overnight, but these will become people's long-term strategies, for the next decade. Let's say, why do we need to have huge offices when actually we saw more productivity from our staff when they were all sat at home in their kids' playroom stroke, or in a bedroom or whatever it is. But I can only speak on my own behalf and some of the guys that work with me, but actually weirdly we've never been busier in some ways. Yes, we're not busy making money per se, but we're busy doing all the stuff that we never get a chance to do in any given normal day because you're running around doing a million and one other things, so I think it's going to teach.
We've never had more thinking time. That's one thing that I think you like me would be all around the country, and most of the thinking time was done whilst driving to wherever you're going to next. But then you'd get there and you'd crack on with what you were doing, what you went there for. This period has definitely given everyone thinking time, and it's almost like the pause button's been pressed, and it's you've got to make the most of it. And we're talking about the short term. Longer term, regardless of this, the marketplace was going to be changing and evolving at pace anyway. Vehicles are getting more complex and harder to diagnose. We're getting to that pinch point with fast fits and independents where significant investment is going to be required to keep up with the OEs and the franchise dealer groups in diagnostic equipment, the hybrid and the EV. And it's a completely different mindset. So add that into now, plus the fact that our end user is becoming more and more digitally savvy. If we need anything, in our house, we pick up our phone and we go on an app. I can't remember the last time I rang anybody to order anything. And that's gonna be coming into the automotive market. And this is probably just heightened that a little bit more.
Accelerated a few things a bit quicker.
And this is where I think that ability to adapt to change is critical, because with or without COVID, that was going to have to be the mentality anyway. This just heightens it. So and it's just almost whilst I say it's pressed the pause button, it's almost brought the future into the present quicker.
Definitely. I agree. So you'll probably see, certainly through the dealership sector at least, there's been, probably over the last 5 to 6 years, there's been a lot of consolidation through dealer groups, that sort of stuff. You'll probably see that may accelerate that even quicker. The ones that can afford to do it will do it, and the other ones that hanging on by the skin of their teeth situation, may get gobbled up. So that consolidation, I think, will probably potentially continue. Who knows? But I think technology, everything. I don't think if people think necessarily the recruitment situation, and this is me just speaking personally, but I don't think it's necessarily, people will lose their jobs, unfortunately, through this crisis. But the UK's never been as employed as it currently was before this. Even when, we weren't really having an amazingly good time with Brexit and everything else that was going on around it, but we'd never been more employed as a nation. So the statistics were telling us. And, actually, are we going to see more technicians out? No, we're not. But I think where there is a good opportunity, and one of the questions we get asked all the time by a lot of garages, dealers, we're desperate for good service advisors, we're desperate for good parts advisors, we're desperate. Well, actually, industries that are really going to hurt out of this will be people like hospitality sector, travel industry. They're very good customer facing, customer service skilled people. So actually for the automotive sector, there's a really good opportunity in this. We could be a sector that could win out of bringing some really quality people into this sector. And, if garages and dealerships and people out there, for me, I'd be drawing up a strategy at the moment. If you can afford to do it and you can go and hire people when you come out of the back end of this, then there's going to be some really good people in the market space that you could go and grab that you probably wouldn't normally ever get a look at, so.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, great. Because people will look at this sector when we get back to whatever normality is, and as one that actually, regardless of what crisis we go through, is one where there's an element of job security.
Yeah.
There will be a number of industries that don't come out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, agreed. Well, great. Well, thanks for that today, mate. Great to chew the fat as always with you. Some really good points in there, and thanks for your input. Really appreciate it, and your honesty as well. I think it's again, it's hard subject to talk about, and everybody's hurting at the moment, but trying to put a positive spin on it and keep everybody upbeat. And as always, you're always honest and on point with stats and figures, mate. And hope everybody enjoyed that today. And I'll speak to you soon, mate. Okay.
No, thanks for the opportunity, Gavin. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Anthony. Thanks a lot. Bye.
See ya.